The new NBA season is literally about to begin, with the regular season tipping off soon, and typically by this time, all of the best players are comfortably under contract and have been preparing for the new campaign with their teams for weeks. But this year, there is a weirdly large amount of talent still available, which brings us to today's video. Today, we'll be discussing 5 players that are somehow still available free agents right now that could 100% help an NBA team's rotation immediately with skill sets that make me just flat out confused as to how they are still unemployed at this time. There are still teams out there with weak spots in their rotations, and some of these guys you would think would be perfect fits at a low cost. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first player we'll be discussing today that is somehow still an unsigned free agent is Malik Beasley. We're all aware of the circumstances that Beasley was dealing with at the beginning of the summer, but for those somehow unfamiliar, basically, he was investigated in a potential gambling scandal. He was, however, cleared by the FBI in that investigation, so he should be in the clear to resume his NBA career. And apparently, the NBA is now performing their own investigation into the matter, I guess. If the FBI cleared him, I'm not sure what the holdup is from the NBA side of things, but either way, it's looking like that mess is ready to be put behind Beasley, and after an incredible season last year with the Pistons, where he averaged about 16 points per game, shooting 9 threes per game and making them at a red-hot 42% clip, he's a player that improves literally any team's rotation by being a part of it. He's an above-average perimeter defender that fights hard. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective as someone who moves well into space and stays ready off the catch to get shots up, and he happily embraces any role the team needs him in, whether that be as a starting shooting guard or as a sixth man. This is obviously a unique situation because of outside factors forcing teams to steer clear until they get full confirmation that Beasley is good to go without ulterior setbacks, but it's also setting one lucky team up who lands him, the ultimate value signing for the season, since nobody's got any money left to offer him a substantial contract that he was likely going to get this summer before all of this came about. He's not going to be looking for more than a one-year deal because next summer he will be back looking for a more hefty long-term option, but short-term, his shooting can be a weapon for rotations, and there are definitely teams out there with spacing issues that could use him. The next player we'll be discussing that is somehow still an available free agent with the season about to begin is Ben Simmons. At this point, Simmons is such an enigma that nobody can really crack. He was once the #1 pick in the draft and has been an all-star 3 times in his career, while also being in the running for the Defensive Player of the Year award, and now, just 4 years later, he's 29 years old in what should be the prime of his career, yet instead, people are asking themselves if he will ever even play basketball in the NBA again. Of course, Simmons is someone whose downfall has been definitely impacted by injuries, as his nagging back issues have completely changed the way he plays, and back issues are no joke, so the lack of burst he now has compared to what he had in his pre-injury days plays a big part in his current unemployment status. But even before the back injuries, he's been a player that has been heavily criticized as someone who refused to work on the weak parts of his game, and his refusal to ever even try to embrace perimeter shooting as an aspect of the game has limited his potential a ton. Even with all of that being true though, Simmons still has a skill set that can help a team in spurts off the bench at the very least. Just last season, he was averaging about 7 assists per game when he was playing with the Brooklyn Nets, which would have been good for the 12th most in the whole league on the season had he not been traded to the Clippers and barely played with them for the remainder of the year. He's also still a strong rebounder of the ball and defends multiple positions at an above-average level, which is a step down from where he was as a defender a few years ago, but it's still useful nonetheless. As a secondary ball handler and playmaker with the size and versatility to help a defense, there really isn't much risk in taking a swing on him, since it won't cost much to sign him, and the upside, if he's healthy, is worth it. The next player we'll be discussing, somehow still unsigned as a free agent with the season about to begin, is Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo is probably a name you haven't heard in a few years because the last time he was in the NBA was with the Miami Heat, where he managed to only play in 8 total games in the whole 2022 season and only half of the season in 2023, and was completely out of the league over the last 2 years. He's yet another example of a former All-Star talent completely hampered by injuries, and after going toe-to-toe with LeBron James and the Cavaliers in the 2018 playoffs, he seemed to be on a superstar trajectory, which is just very unfortunate. He's still just 33 years old though, and in the modern NBA, we're seeing players stick around well into their late 30s, so it's far from being over for Victor if he can get his body back into form, and after being away from the game for 2 years, he is back in an unusual manner, but one that may be saving his NBA dreams. In the preseason, NBA teams often scrimmage against teams from other leagues and countries, including Australian teams, European teams, and Chinese teams, for example, and Victor Oladipo happens to have just signed a contract to play for the Guangzhou Loon Lions in China, and they happened to be on the NBA preseason circuit, playing games against the Spurs and Clippers, so Oladipo got to show everyone that he is back in form, and he took that opportunity and ran with it. Against the Spurs in that preseason game, he dropped 20 points, and then in the next preseason game against the Clippers, he dropped 24 points, clearly demonstrating he could still give buckets to NBA caliber defenders. Oladipo has made it clear in interviews that he's focused on making a comeback to the NBA, and he backed those words up on the court, so I'm all in on him being a viable signing for any team as a low-risk, potentially high-reward option. The next player we'll be discussing that is somehow still an available free agent at the start of the season is Dariq Whitehead. Whitehead was once the number 2 recruit in the country, seen as a potential star in the making, but 3 major injuries to the lower body since that point have crushed the once explosive athleticism he had, and his upside has substantially reduced. After being selected 22nd overall in the 2023 NBA draft, he's managed to only play a total of 22 games in the league combined in his career, because the injuries keep stacking up, and with the Brooklyn Nets having just waived him, his once promising career is already on its last legs unless he manages a big turnaround. I know it's hard to see the silver lining with situations like this, but even though the sample size of his time on the court has been small, he has shown some very promising things with his game when he's been out there. For one, he's always been a naturally gifted scorer of the ball, and that hasn't changed even without the burst that he once had. To extrapolate his numbers to a per 36 basis, Whitehead was putting up about 17 points in that time frame, and on the season as a whole, he shot a highly impressive 44% from 3. It's hard to come by wing players that are genuinely comfortable creating for themselves off the dribble with the skill to efficiently take and make tough shots and space the floor as well as Whitehead does, but he can do that. It can't hurt to take a swing on him as an end-of-bench piece, and if he does manage to stay healthy for a season, then whoever takes that chance will stumble onto a pot of gold with a bench contributor that can ignite an offense. And finally, the last player we'll be discussing who is somehow still unsigned going into the new season is Alec Burks. Burks has never had a flashy game, nor has he been a flashy name in the league, but for years he has provided steady production and stuck to what he's good at. He's not necessarily a great defender, he's not a primary creator in an offense, but he is a very good shooter of the ball who also doesn't turn it over very much, which is always a plus as a secondary ball handler. Burks was on the Heat last season, playing about 18 minutes per game, and on the year, he averaged about 7 points per game, but he shot a ridiculous 42.5% from 3 on 4 attempts per game. He's great off the catch, and he had a sneakily tight handle with concise decision-making and a quick pull-up jumper off 1 or 2 dribbles. Burks has shot at least 38% from 3 in each of the last 6 seasons, including shooting above 40% from 3 in 4 of those years. He's a proven secondary scorer for countless teams in countless different systems, and he's 34 years old, so he still has a few years left in this shape. I'm looking at the landscape of some NBA rotations right now, and there's no excuse for them to be as bad as a whole at shooting the ball as some of them are, when players like this are still available. So for Burks and the other 4 players discussed today, it baffles me to see the season about to begin without them signed. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you think should sign these 5 players. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.